relational cruft, relational debt, we'll call it, is a real thing, and it's one of the primary sources of drag inside of an organization.
I'm married. I don't have a co-founder because I was too scared to even try that, but I definitely know what you mean.
If you imagine communication as a pipe, like there's a pipe between me and you, and we can right now, because we've met only recently, we can basically say anything. Each time we do one of those, like, not a big deal, we'll let it go. And even though it does bug me, I'm just gonna let it go. It creates, imagine just like a little bit of gunk in the pipe. It's inevitable. There's no, you can like tiptoe around all the tulips and try to make it perfect and all that, and you'll still do it. Companies are not built by normal relationships. Companies are built by hyper-effective relationships. It just requires a handy 3-step, simple but very hard process.
Well, I'm just like, man, what you said that gave me the trepidation is bringing it up every time. I'm going to implement it right away. There's people I need to talk to in my company right now, and the way that you've suggested it is going to, change our trajectory, like just from this alone. So everybody, today on How Do I, we're joined by Ryan Vaughn, executive coach and serial entrepreneur who transforms difficult co-founder dynamics. Ryan founded Inside Out Leadership. He's coaching founders through his hard-earned business wisdom and deep personal development work. He's coached over 100 founders to over 10 billion in equity value. And today he's sharing his clearing conversation framework to tackle the question, how do I clean up a shitty co-founder relationship? So Ryan, we're talking about co-founder relationships. What's your experience with that?
I had a co-founder in each of the 3 businesses I started before this one. This one I'm on my own, but the 3 businesses before I had them. Mm-hmm. In each of those businesses, that was one of the primary tensions of growing that business. Yeah. Different reasons in hindsight along the way that those tensions existed, but definitely, big source of potential leverage and also a big source of stress and drag in a lot of cases. So as an operator, I have that. That's been my experience. And then these days I work with founders, some of the highest growth founders in the world, all topics in terms of the founder's journey, but one common thread is definitely the co-founder relationship too. So as a coach, I see it a lot as well, both the upside and the downside.
So that you've not only had, you said a few co-founders, you're also helping people work through their co-founder relationships. So yeah, glad to have you on. So how do I clean up a shitty co-founder relationship?
So what I've found, I'm doing this a number of times, both individually by myself and then also walking folks through it, is first off, that relational cruft, relational debt, we'll call it, is a real thing, and it's one of the primary sources of drag inside of an organization. When 2 people work together for a long period of time, they necessarily develop what I think of as cruft, just like shit in the relationship that prevents honest and open communication.
Interesting.
And that type of cruft ends up leading to, just poor communication, hurt feelings, missed expectations, and all of those things are a great recipe for a company underperforming relative to what it could go.
Can you tell me a bit, like, what do you mean the cruft? Like, what do you mean by that? And then where does it come from?
Yeah, so cruft, I think it's like a software development term, reappropriating it.
Perfect.
For the relationship world. And it's just like, if you imagine communication as a pipe, like there's a pipe between me and you, and we can right now, because we've met only recently, we can basically say anything, right? Okay. But if we work together for a long period of time, what will happen is, usually by degrees in very small instances, something will happen and I'll be like, no big deal, I'm not going to bring it up. We'll just let it go. Mm-hmm. And you might do that a couple times, and I might do that a couple times. And each time we do one of those, like, not a big deal, we'll let it go. Mm-hmm. Even though it does bug me, I'm not just going to let it go. It creates, imagine just like a little bit of gunk in the pipe.
Okay.
Right? And you've worked together for 3-4 years. Now there might be some big gunk in the pipe, which has built up over a long period of time. Yep. And what used to be really clear and open communication is now I got to kind of like angle it this way to avoid hitting this thing. Can't really talk about this thing, so I got to go here. You know what I mean? And all of a sudden what was an easy relationship, or at least an effective relationship, now like we're arguing over where to go to lunch, which really, who gives a shit about lunch? But it's all of the background cruft that is causing us to get into these ruts. And that's oftentimes that might be an extreme situation, but it's that debt, the debt that we pay every time we say, no big deal, I'm not going to bring it up. Okay. That is occurring debt right there. And we do that enough, and it prevents clear communication and effective communication between any 2 people, marriages, co-founders, anything. But it just so happens that we're talking about co-founders today, which is a big source of it.
Okay. Got it. I'm married. I don't have a co-founder because I was too scared to even try that, but I definitely know what you mean.
Yeah, there is some relational debt in that relationship too, would be very common.
I mean, we're decent about kind of getting blown through the pipes out here and there, but I mean, it still
Yeah.
builds up.
Yeah. Of course, it can't not in the way that I mean, if we're spending a lot of time with people.
So
So,
you just said it can't not. Does that mean like this is just what happens? Okay.
yeah, it's inevitable. There's no, you can like tiptoe around all the tulips and try to make it perfect and all that, and you'll still do it.
Okay.
You'll still, you'll realize, wake up one day and you're like, oh crap, there's like a thing that's unsaid between us. Didn't realize it at the moment, but now if I think of that person, that's what shows up. It's
Wow.
like,
Okay.
there's that thing.
Okay.
Yeah. It is absolutely worthwhile to, when you notice yourself with a choice of, should I say this thing or not say this thing? If you can really let the thing go and you really honestly don't care, then whatever. But if you do care, just recognize that by acting as if you don't, by letting it go, then you're incurring a little bit of debt. And do that enough, you're going to have to pay that debt off at some point. And so what we'll talk about today is after some debt has been accumulated, after the relationship is not functioning in the way that you'd like it to in some meaningful way, how do you go about cleaning those pipes? Which is preferable to clean it when, well before it's gotten bad. But even when it's bad, it's definitely salvageable. It just requires a handy 3-step, simple but very hard process.
Okay.
That's what we'll walk through today.
Cool. Okay. Yeah. Simple but hard makes sense.
You look like you have such trepidation. We can.
Well, I'm
we can
just
dive
thinking,
in.
I'm just like, man, what you said that give me the trepidation is bringing it up every time you're like, oh shit, I can't let that go, or that affected me in some way, and you're telling me that I should bring it up every time. I mean, I don't have a co-founder, but I have a wife and I have kids and I have good friends and stuff, and I'm sure, like, I don't know, there's probably a lot of situations I'm not bringing things up.
Yeah, withholds is a real thing, and I will also say, like, it is common to not bring that stuff up. Like, we all sort of give each other a pass, right? And that's a normal way of being in the world. But companies are not built by normal relationships. Companies are built by hyper effective relationships. Really effective companies are built by hyper effective relationships. And clearing up withholds is a key part of that, because the withholds are the things that ultimately get in the way of us being able to communicate openly.
Got it.
We have a good example is I've worked with a founder relatively recently who had a senior performer, somebody they had brought in, like a CRO, I think, that was underperforming and had kind of gotten in the weeds with, some other projects that weren't driving revenue, sort of had a sense that this wasn't working the way that I wanted it to, and we have some shit to deal with, but I don't really know how to do that. So that's kind of an example of context. So there's 3 steps to go through the clearing this process. And the goal of this is to basically take all of the gunk that's in there, approach it head on, put it all on the table, and then sweep it clean and create a clearing for something new to be created.
And this is the clearing conversation?
Yeah. So the first step that you do is you observe what's true for you. So let's say I'm in this conversation with the chief revenue officer. The first thing I might do is say, hey, I have noticed that we have not hit the numbers that we originally set out to do. I have noticed that you've told me that you're spending a lot of time in this other area. And I've noticed that for me, it's felt like we are kind of on different pages. And that's made me feel a little bit frustrated. And you'll notice when I just said all of those things, what I could have done is I might have said, I've noticed that you've been missing all your goals and haven't been performing in this way.
Right.
I might have said all those things and I didn't. The model that's useful to use when you're observing what's true is called speaking inarguably. And the way that you speak inarguably is you keep it to objective facts and your own feelings. No interpretations, no stories, no nothing like that.
Okay.
Just the objective facts. We have missed this number, and my feelings are that's making me feel frustrated. Right? Neither of those things you as the recipient could argue with, because they're just one's a fact and then one's how I feel. Right? So by speaking inarguably when you're observing what's true, that sort of diffuses some of the natural tension and like defensiveness that can show up in conversations like this. So it's a great place to start. So that's step 1 is just observe. This is all the stuff that's true. And then here's the stories that I'm telling myself and the emotions that I'm feeling about it.
I read an article once that said that a lot of men, specifically in North America, we know like 4 feeling words, and that's about it. What do we do when we're like, I'm mad, but that's not quite the word? Like, how do we do a better job of telling someone how we're feeling? And the other thing is, like, how do you get over the fact that you have to tell someone how you're feeling?
So this is, in my opinion, in my experience, a core competency for leaders, particularly as you scale, is feeling emotional literacy. So the reason I say that is it's worth investing the time in understanding specifically how you feel so that you can make good decisions ultimately. If you can imagine, like, if I am frustrated, I'm going to think different thoughts. My logic will work differently versus if I'm not, if I'm sad or if
Right.
I'm, lonely or whatever. Our logic exists within the context of our emotions. So if we're really interested in making a very logical, very precise decision, we need to know the emotional container that it's existing in so that we can tear that out in like the science TARE sort of a way. So the goal of this first step is just, this is sort of laying the groundwork and diffusing that defensiveness. The second step is sort of like 2A and 2B. The first part of that is to take 100% responsibility for the situation. So the truth is that there's not a correct way of interpreting a situation. We might look at the situation and say, man, this is totally his fault, or it's totally mine, or it's like this, whatever. All of that is interpretation. None of it's real. It's just our perspective versus somebody else's perspective. And you can imagine that, especially in a conversation like this, there's going to be multiple perspectives, right? And so if we get into blame or anything like that, that can take you off the rails. The way around that is to own 100% responsibility for creating the conditions for this outcome to occur. So as an example, in this case, I might say, hey, we have, underperformed and I've felt frustrated and like we're disconnected. And I want to take responsibility for a couple things. First off, when I hired you, I did not go through the onboarding process in quite as thorough a way as I would have liked to, and that led to some ambiguity around what what the goal was for your performance. We also have had feedback, like plenty of opportunities for feedback, and I haven't given you like constructive feedback to let you know that this is an expectation of mine for the last 6 months you've been working here. I'm only bringing it to you now. I could have let you know a whole bunch of times before it was a big deal. And I could have, that was my responsibility to bring that up and to give you that constructive feedback beforehand. And I might come up with 3-4 things that I've done that put us in this situation that ensured that this person, this revenue officer didn't have the clarity that they needed. And of course they didn't perform because they didn't realize that's how I was measuring them. I talk about taking 100% responsibility because, well, of course it's their responsibility. It's not mine. Like, they have to perform, they have to hit numbers. There's a great exercise that I found from the Conscious Leadership Group, and I use it a lot with clients around finding where you are responsible. And the exercise goes like, you pretend that you are an adjunct professor at choose your college of choice, right? And they're paying you a ton of money to teach a class on how to create the results that you already have. So as an example, in this case, teach a class on how to create a chief revenue officer who doesn't hit his targets and there's a lot of tension between you and the relationship.
Interesting.
You got to go in there and teach that, right? You got to go in there and help all these students create that sort of a wacky relationship and then write the lesson plan. With that lens, you have people try this on, they start to see like, well, if I really wanted to create this fucked up relationship, probably what I would do is I wouldn't give feedback. I'd let it get nasty. I wouldn't do this, right? And you kind of get a sense of all of these things that along the way that you've done to create that environment. Does that make sense?
I mean, that's awesome. And yeah, I love those thought experiments where you take yourself out of yourself. Because I don't know, there's so many different ways that I find those are effective. And you're right, this is so simple, but I can feel my ego going like, already as you're doing some of this stuff.
There's a process, right?
Yeah.
And it takes some bravery to be willing to take 100% responsibility for a situation. But taking 100% responsibility is what allows you to make change. And it gives you tools to make change that otherwise aren't available. So that's 2A, we'll say. 2B is you acknowledge the impact of the things that you've done. So I have not given you feedback. I did not set the stage right and clearly communicate to you that this was my expectation of, I want this priority as opposed to this priority, and this one can be downgraded. And as a result of that, clearly you didn't have the information that you needed to make strong prioritization decisions.
Right.
Didn't realize along the way that I was upset.
Right.
And so I've just sort of allowed myself to stew in this. You think you're performing, and
right.
Meanwhile, like I'm very different. So that has created an environment for you where you have been set up to fail. That's step 2, is owning the entirety of this situation and owning the impact on the other person. And in doing that, they're, of course, they play a role, and they have also, like, they have to hit numbers and all these other things, right? But the point is that you're owning everything, the entire context, to, again, prevent that sort of defensiveness and allow them to have the environment they need to succeed. And that leads to step 3. Step 3 is, after you have taken 100% responsibility and acknowledged the impact, you make a commitment to changing the things that you've done to create this environment for the better. So in this case, I commit to, I haven't been giving you good feedback. I commit to, henceforth, I'm going to meet with you once every 2 weeks, and I'm going to be really honest about how I think things are going, because you deserve to have really good feedback. And I'm going to, I want to have a heart-to-heart around really how I want these priorities to be structured, because I wasn't clear about that on the front end. But now I want to make sure that there's no ambiguity, because I want to set you up for success, so you really know that this is the thing that's important, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So these are your commitments are the antidotes to the ways that you've created this environment.
I noticed that you don't seem to be asking for an apology or really anything from the other person at all, almost, right? Is that true?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's exactly true. Yeah. Yeah, because if I actually do the work to identify how am I responsible for creating this thing, inevitably there are ways that you're responsible for that thing. If I do that work and I come up with these are the ways that I have created, or I'm at least complicit in creating this bad result, and then I change all of those things, I take responsibility, and I make sure you're going to get great feedback. You're going to be super clear on this. You're going to have da 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 da. If I do all those things, there's no excuse at all for them to not perform. They don't have to do anything different. They just need to do their job. I will handle all of my things that I did wrong. And then either they'll do their job well, in which case, fantastic, then you fix the problem, or they won't do their job well, in which case you have a different conversation that needs to be had with them. But what you'll find is, in having this conversation with this person, all of the shit that you've been holding on to is on the table. You've owned it. And sometimes they'll come back and we'll have a conversation around, they might even say, like, actually, no, I own this. And, sometimes that happens too. And it turns into like how much of the responsibility can I take versus them? That's also can be productive.
Cool.
But either way, all of it's now out on the table. We don't have to tiptoe around it. We can actually work on what the solution is, and we can have open communication without all of that shit in the pipe. And that's ultimately the foundation for whatever you're going to build next.
And so step 1 is it's the
observe what's true for you.
Observe what's true in your feelings about it. Step 2 is accept responsibility.
Without getting into story for that first one. It's just the facts and your feelings, not stories.
No stories, just facts and feelings. Step 2 is figure out what ways you're responsible and acknowledge them. And then step 3 is commit to changing. Right?
Yep.
You mean, you're right, that is simple. But
yeah, it's simple.
Wait, I hate that I don't get an apology. And I mean, I'm being a little facetious, but honestly, I don't know. What if you hire someone really smart and they should know better? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe I'm being a baby on a podcast and stuff, but you know what I mean? Like, that's kind of how I feel.
Well, I think that's an important part of what's true for you. Then you got to bring that up. You got to bring up and I feel like it's really hurt my feelings. And, as I have been going through this process, as we've been in this relationship, I've been holding a grudge. I've been really feeling like I want him to apologize because he really screwed me over on this thing. I've been holding on to that. And that's been coloring how I've been showing up in relationship with you.
That's so cool.
In order for it to be an effective clearing conversation, you have to do the work afterwards, which sets you up to get a different result.
Right.
But B, at the end of the conversation, you should be able to feel like, you should be able to look at yourself and be like, there's nothing else to say. Like, I've said all the shit.
Wow, really?
If I have said all the stuff, then the pipe is now clear, and I can continue to sort of build on that clear communication, and you'll be able to tell. Like, you'll leave the conversation next time you walk up to the person. If you feel that tightening, then I didn't say something. There's something there, and then you can kind of explore what's left that I haven't communicated to this person.
Awesome. Okay, how often do you do this?
Depends on the relationship. Oftentimes, when I work with founders, they have never done it. And so we do it, and it's a really big thing. And that sort of sets the stage for, cool, we're going to communicate in a different way now for me and my co-founder. And then it becomes like whenever there's a thing, maybe once a quarter or something like that. But after that, it's a much smaller version of it, because we've gone through all of the, the buildup that's happened for years. And now we're just working with like, you did this thing. I felt like you let me down. I didn't say anything, but it really did bug me. I realized I wasn't clear enough on where this was. And so I just wanted to reveal myself to you in terms of how I was feeling in this place. And it becomes a kind of a smaller issue from a maintenance perspective moving forward.
And you mentioned like if something affects you, you should bring it up. And so does that mean, let's say in the course of our day, like I don't know, you miss this thing and it's actually fairly small, we would normally let it go. Do you in the middle of the day go, hey, can I have just a quick aside? Like, here's something that happened. It was really small, but I felt like this, and I didn't tell you about that. I meant this to me. And would you do it regularly, like, or
Sure.
do you wait?
Yeah.
No. Okay.
Well, I think you brought up a really good example in that, it might be a little thing like I said I would get this to you by end of day today, and I didn't. It's tomorrow, as an example, right? Or I said I'll be there at 2:00 for the meeting, and it's like 2:07, like whatever. These are all things that normally we'd be like, no biggie.
Sure.
But they impact trust, and they set the state, and they create cruft in the relationship.
Yeah.
Like, per our previous conversation.
Yeah.
A company's success is in essence built on the back of its promises to itself and to one person to another inside itself. And if we it is normal in human interaction for us to give passes for all that stuff.
Sure.
But it also sets the stage that like close enough is close enough for everything inside the organization. And that becomes a cultural tenet, and that can be a pretty harmful one relative to the types of outcomes that a lot of companies want to achieve. Those types of outcomes require a level of trust that is abnormal. And that's ultimately what we teach.
Well, this is awesome. And I feel like we know now how to clear out a relationship. And is this successful a lot of the time?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. If you do it honestly, yeah, it's a successful pattern. Doesn't necessarily mean that the relationship survives, because sometimes there's reasons why it doesn't. But it does successfully clear the decks on all the things that are there and allow you guys to have a real conversation and really create what's next in a way that works for both parties.
Well, Ryan, what are you working on right now, and how can people get in touch with you?
So I run an executive coaching firm that's kind of a unique one. It's called Inside Out Leadership, and it's staffed entirely by post-exit founders.
Oh, wow.
Who have, for their various reasons, gotten into coaching as a way of giving back to people at various stages of the startup life cycle. So we work with founders at all scales on the personal growth process of startup leadership. And you can find us at leadinsideout.io. And there's also this model, as well as a dozen or a couple dozen other models that are useful. You can take and put to work in your companies right away.
Amazing. That's awesome. Well, yeah, thank you. This was pretty incredible, I think. I'm going to implement it right away. There's people I need to talk to in my company right now, and the way that you've suggested it is going to, I don't know, change our trajectory, like just from this alone. So thanks. I really appreciate your time.
Can you, the extra challenge would be in the show notes, say how it went after you talk to them?
I certainly can. I know exactly who it is, and I know exactly what I have to say. Yeah, it's going to be fantastic. I mean, maybe a little difficult
Let us
as well.
all know how it goes.
Yeah, 100%. I can do that. Cool. Ryan,
Awesome.
thank you, man.
Awesome.